They found Chukwudi 3 days after his wife disappeared. He was sitting in the middle of his compound, surrounded by broken calabashes and scattered cowrie shells, speaking to people who weren't there. His eyes were open, but he saw nothing. His mouth moved constantly, forming words in a language no one recognized, not Igbo, not Yoruba, not Hausa. Something older. The elders refused to enter his compound. They stood at the gate, watching him through the iron bars, and when the younger men asked what was happening, the old ones simply shook their heads and walked away. Only Mama Ngozi, the oldest woman in Umuaka village, paused long enough to whisper, "The land remembers what we forget." Chukwudi had not always been this way. 6 months earlier, he was the pride of his family, a successful businessman who had returned from Lagos to build a fine house with a zinc roof that gleamed in the sun. He drove a black jeep that made children run alongside it, cheering. When he married Adaeze, the daughter of a palm wine tapper from the neighboring village, people said he had chosen well. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was kind. The type of woman who would greet everyone, even the mad woman who lived by the stream. Adaeze moved into Chukwudi's house with nothing but a small wooden box and a smile that could light up the darkest room. For 3 months, the compound was filled with laughter. She planted flowers by the veranda. She sang while cooking. The neighbors would say they had never seen Chukwudi so happy. But then his mother came to visit. Mama Chukwudi arrived from the city with 6 suitcases and a permanently disappointed expression. She took one look at Adaeze and decided the girl was not good enough for her son. Too quiet. Too simple. And after 4 months of marriage, still no pregnancy. "That girl is wasting your time," she told Chukwudi every evening. "A woman who cannot give you children after 4 months. Something is wrong with her. You need to find a real woman." The change in Chukwudi was gradual, like water slowly coming to boil. First, he stopped defending Adaeze when his mother criticized her. Then he stopped talking to her altogether during his mother's visits. Then, even when they were alone, his eyes held something cold that hadn't been there before. When Adaeze finally became pregnant in the 5th month of their marriage, she thought everything would change. She waited for the right moment to tell him, prepared his favorite soup, wore her best wrapper, practiced the words in her mind. But Mama Chukwudi was visiting again. When Adaeze announced her pregnancy at dinner, expecting joy, she instead watched Chukwudi's face darken. His mother had whispered something in his ear earlier that day, something Adaeze couldn't hear but felt in her bones. "Are you sure it's mine?" Chukwudi asked, his voice flat. The soup spoon fell from Adaeze's hand. What are you saying?" "My mother says you've been seen talking to the palm wine tapper's son. The one who walks past our house every morning." "Chukwudi, I only greet him. He's my cousin." But Mama Chukwudi smiled, a thin smile that never reached her eyes. A guilty woman always has explanations. That night, Chukwudi locked Adaeze out of their bedroom. She slept on the floor in the corridor, her hand on her belly, whispering to the child growing inside, "Don't worry, your father will remember who he is. He will remember." But he didn't. The beating came on a Thursday evening. Chukwudi had been drinking with his friends, and his mother had spent the afternoon filling his head with more poison. When he came home, he found Adaeze sleeping on the mat in the living room. She was 6 months pregnant now, exhausted from a day of washing clothes and cooking meals that no one thanked her for. He dragged her awake by her hair. What happened next, the neighbors heard but did not see. They heard the slaps, the sound of something heavy hitting the wall, Adaeze's cries for mercy. They heard Mama Chukwudi's voice, encouraging her son, "Yes. Teach her. Women like this need strong handling." When Chukwudi finally threw open the front door, he shoved Adaeze into the red dust of the compound. She fell heavily, her pregnant belly hitting the ground first. "Get out of my house," he shouted. "Take your bastard child and get out. If I ever see you again, I will kill you." Adaeze tried to stand, but the pain in her stomach made her cry out. She looked up at her husband, the man who had promised to love her, who had held her hand under the moon and sworn to protect her, and saw only a stranger. She crawled to the gate while the neighbors watched from their windows, too afraid to intervene. At the gate, she pulled herself up using the iron bars and turned back one last time. "Chukwudi," she said, her voice somehow steady despite the tears. "You will remember this night. The land will make sure you remember." Then she was gone, limping into the darkness. The strange things started that same night. Chukwudi went to bed satisfied, his mother praising him for being a strong man. But at midnight, he woke to the sound of singing, a woman's voice, soft and sad, coming from the compound. When he looked out the window, he saw nothing but shadows. The singing continued every night. By the third day, the crops in his farm began to die. The yam tendrils turned black. The cassava roots rotted in the ground. His neighbors' farms, just meters away, remained green and healthy. Only Chukwudi's land was cursed. "It's just bad soil," he told himself, but his voice shook. Then the dreams began. Every night, he saw Adaeze standing at the foot of his bed, her belly swollen, her eyes sad. She never spoke in the dreams. She just stood there, watching him, one hand on her stomach, the other reaching toward him. He would wake up screaming. Mama Chukwudi told him to ignore it. "It's just guilt," she said. "You did nothing wrong. That girl was trying to trap you with another man's child." But the signs continued. Birds began to die in his compound, falling from the sky mid-flight, landing with soft thuds on the zinc roof. The well water turned red. Not rust red, but blood red. The neighbors stopped coming to his house. They stopped greeting him on the road. On the seventh day, his jeep, his pride and joy, refused to start. When the mechanic finally opened the hood, he jumped back with a shout. The engine was covered in red sand, the same red sand from the compound where Adaeze had fallen. But no one had opened that hood since the night she left. That's when Chukwudi decided to find her. Not because he was sorry, he wasn't ready to admit that yet. But because he thought that if he could see her, talk to her, maybe convince her to take back whatever she had done, everything would return to normal. He drove to her father's compound in the neighboring village. The old palm wine tapper met him at the gate. "Where is she?" Chukwudi demanded. The old man stared at him with eyes that held no warmth. "She came here that night, bleeding, crying. She begged me to help her." "Do you know what I told her?" Chukwudi said nothing. "I told her to go to the mission hospital in town. I gave her money for transport. That was 3 weeks ago." The old man's voice cracked. "She never arrived at the hospital. No one has seen her since." The world tilted beneath Chukwudi's feet. "What do you mean no one has seen her?" "I mean," the old man said slowly, "that my pregnant daughter left here alone, in pain, in the middle of the night, and she vanished. And you, the man who swore to protect her, you are the reason why." Chukwudi searched everywhere. He went to the hospital, no record of her. He went to the police, they took his report but their eyes said they'd seen this story before. Important man chases away wife, then wants to find her only when the consequences arrive. He drove up and down the road between the two villages, asking everyone, but no one had seen a pregnant woman walking alone that night. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. And that's when the real hunting began. He started seeing her everywhere. At the market, standing between stalls, her belly huge now, her eyes locked on him. On the road at night, walking slowly ahead of his car, always just out of reach. In his house, sitting in the chair where she used to peel vegetables, humming the songs she used to sing. But whenever he got close, she vanished. His mother fled back to Lagos, claiming the village air was too harsh for her health. But Chukwudi knew the truth. She had seen Adaeze too, standing at the foot of her bed one night, just watching, saying nothing. The elders finally came to his house on the 20th day. They brought a dibia, a traditional healer, who walked around the compound with a white chicken and bitter leaves, muttering prayers. "This is beyond my power," the dibia finally said. "The land itself is angry with you. You have broken something sacred." "What did I break?" Chukwudi asked, his voice hoarse from sleepless nights. "You threw out your pregnant wife. You spilled the blood of an innocent woman carrying your child on this ground. The earth is a mother, and mothers do not forget when children are harmed. How do I fix it? Tell me. I'll do anything." The dibia looked at him with something like pity. "Find her. Beg her forgiveness. Make right what you have broken. Or the land will take payment another way." On the 23rd day, Chukwudi was driving back from another fruitless search when he saw her. Adaeze was standing by the roadside, exactly where the path to the sacred grove began, the old forest where children were forbidden to play, where people said the ancestors still walked. This time, she didn't vanish. Chukwudi stopped the car and stepped out slowly. She looked different. Thinner. Her wrapper was torn and stained. But her belly was still swollen with child, and her eyes held an ancient sadness. "Adaeze," he whispered. "Please. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Come home." She didn't speak. She simply turned and walked into the grove. Everything in Chukwudi's body screamed at him not to follow. The grove was forbidden. People who entered the sacred forest were sometimes never seen again. But he had come this far. He had to know. He had to make this right. He followed her into the trees. The grove was darker than it should have been, even in daylight. The trees grew so thick that the sun couldn't penetrate. With each step, Chukwudi felt like he was walking deeper into some place outside of time. Adaeze stayed ahead of him, always visible but never within reach, leading him deeper and deeper. Finally, they reached a clearing. In the center stood an ancient Iroko tree, its trunk wider than a house. And at the base of that tree, Chukwudi saw something that made his blood freeze. There were bones scattered around the roots. Old bones, some bleached and half buried. And hanging from the branches were pieces of cloth, torn wrappers, faded and weathered, dozens of them, moving in a wind he couldn't feel. Adaeze stopped at the tree and finally turned to face him. "Do you know what this place is?" she asked, her voice echoing strangely in the clearing. Chukwudi couldn't speak. "This is where they come," she continued. "All the women who were cast out. All the wives who were blamed, beaten, discarded. The land keeps their memory. The land gives them voice. Adaeze, please." "I lost the baby," she said simply. "That night, after I left your father's compound, I collapsed on this road. I crawled here, bleeding, crying. And our child, your child, was born too early, too small. I held him for 3 minutes before he stopped breathing." Chukwudi fell to his knees. "I buried him here," Adaeze whispered, pointing to a small mound of earth beside the tree. "Under the protection of the ancestors. Because his own father had cast him out before he could even take his first breath." "I'm sorry," Chukwudi sobbed. "God, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please come back." Adaeze looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but firm. "I am not coming back, Chukwudi. I am going to my mother's sister in Enugu. I will start again. I will heal. And you will live with what you've done. Every day, you will remember. The land will make sure of that." She turned to leave, but paused. "The visions will stop now. I release you from that. But the memory, that is yours to carry." And then she walked away, not vanishing like a ghost, but simply walking, a real woman, broken but not destroyed, leaving behind a man who had lost everything. That was 3 days ago. Now Chukwudi sits in his compound, surrounded by the calabashes and cowrie shells that the dibia left behind, speaking to ghosts that only he can see. Some say he's calling to his son, the child who never got to live. Others say he's calling to all the women his mother taught him to despise. The elders have declared his compound unfit for habitation. They say the land has judged him and found him wanting. Adaeze did go to Enugu. People say she works in a small shop there, that she smiles sometimes, though her eyes still carry sadness. She will heal, in time. Women are stronger than the world gives them credit for. But Chukwudi. His house stands empty now, windows dark, the zinc roof no longer gleaming. Children dare each other to run past it at night. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, neighbors say they can still hear it, a soft crying coming from the compound, the sound of a newborn child who never got to grow old, forever searching for the father who cast him out. Mama Chukwudi never returned to the village. Some sins are too heavy even for mothers to carry. And in Umuaka village, when young men speak roughly to their wives, when they raise their hands in anger, the old women tell them this story. They remind them that the land is watching. That karma doesn't forget. That some debts can never be paid, only endured. If this story touched you, I'd really appreciate if you could like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and may you always choose kindness over pride.